Why did the crowd fall silent the moment he pointed at her? 300 soldiers stood under a punishing sun, boots sinking slightly into dust that smelled like fuel and sweat. The kind of heat that pressed down on your thoughts, slowed your breath, and made tempers short. Most of them were used to this. Shouting officers, demonstrations, ego disguised as instruction. But when Major Kent Rowland stopped packing and locked his gaze on the woman near the back, something shifted. Not loud, not obvious, just a subtle tightening in the air. She hadn't done anything to draw attention. That was the point. Chief Warrant Officer Anna Sharma stood exactly where she was supposed to, spine straight, eyes forward, uniform flawless. Not defiant, not eager, invisible, and for men like Rowland's, invisibility was an insult. He was built like force itself, thick neck, heavy shoulders, a voice trained to dominate rooms. Combat to him wasn't just a skill, it was identity, and identities like his needed an audience. "You," he said, finger cutting through the formation. "Front now." The murmurs began instantly. Not concern, curiosity, the kind that comes when something uncomfortable is about to happen to someone else. Anna stepped forward without hesitation, each movement economical, calm, as if her body had already accepted whatever came next. That calm unsettled him. "What do you do, Chief?" Rowlands asked, circling her. "Signals intelligence," she replied, clear, flat, respectful. He smiled, not kindly. "So keyboards, screens, you fight wars sitting down." A ripple of laughter followed him, thin and obedient. Anna felt it not as embarrassment but as confirmation. This wasn't instruction, it was theater, and she was the prop. Rowlands announced an armbar demonstration. Leverage over strength, control. He took her arm, too tight, too fast. At first it still felt like training, then it didn't. Pressure spiked. Her elbow bent beyond design. Pain flared, sharp, electrical, immediate. She registered it the way she registered data. Angle, force, witnesses, cameras, faces. She did not cry out. That, more than anything, enraged him. When he twisted again, harder, something inside her tore. Not bone, tendon. A sound followed, wet and unmistakable. The formation gasped. Anna inhaled slowly through her nose, held his eyes. "This demonstration is concluded," she said. The words were quiet. They landed like a challenge. He wrenched once more. That was the moment, not because of the pain, but because of the intent behind it. This wasn't instruction, it was punishment, and everyone saw it. When he finally released her, he laughed, tried to reclaim control, tried to frame brutality as lesson. Anna said nothing. She turned, walked away, cradling her arm, leaving behind something louder than shouting: silence. And silence, when witnessed by 300 soldiers, becomes evidence. The clinic smelled like antiseptic and disbelief. The medic's hands were gentle, his eyes were not. He knew what excessive force looked like. He documented everything, carefully. Anna watched every word appear on the screen. Details mattered. She didn't embellish, didn't accuse, just facts, time, location, action, outcome. Paper was power, if used correctly. Back in the vault, surrounded by humming servers and cold air, she felt the pain fully for the first time. A dull, relentless throb that pulsed with her heartbeat. She ignored it. Instead, she accessed the security archive. Camera 2 had the cleanest angle. She watched herself on screen, calm, still, watched his grip tighten, watched her arm bend, watched the moment when training became assault. She encrypted the file, logged it, preserved the chain. Then she wrote. No emotion, no adjectives, just reality. She didn't send it. Not yet. Because systems only respond when pressure is applied at the correct point. 2 days later, pressure arrived wearing rank and arrogance. The dining facility went quiet as Rowlands approached her table. His lieutenants flanked him like shadows with mouths. "How's the arm?" he asked loudly. "Paperwork healing it yet?" Anna kept eating. That infuriated him. He leaned closer, threatened her career, admitted retaliation, surrounded her with witnesses. She noted everything. When she stood to leave, he blocked her path. That was the trigger. That night, under sodium lights in false darkness, they followed her. 3 men, 1 injured arm. No audience, so they thought. When he grabbed her again, pain surged white-hot. And then, 7 seconds. That's all it took. No wild strikes, no rage, just physics, momentum redirected, balance stolen, aggression turned inward. When it ended, all 3 were on the ground, breathing, alive, humiliated. Anna stood still, looked up, made sure the camera saw everything. Then she walked home. The base woke up different the next morning. Rumors spread, then footage, then truth. Investigations began. Rollins talked, loudly, defensively. He accused, blamed, denied. Anna submitted a data slate. Nothing more. The colonel watched the videos in silence. He didn't need commentary. Facts speak for themselves, if someone is brave enough to listen. When the hearing concluded, careers ended, reputations collapsed, and a truth surfaced that stunned the room. Years earlier, a battalion had survived because someone had been watching signals instead of faces. Because Anna Sharma had seen a pattern others missed. She had saved them all. No one had known. She never told them. Afterward, soldiers saluted her differently, not because they feared her, but because they understood her. Strength didn't always shout. Sometimes it waited. Sometimes it documented. Sometimes it acted only when necessary. Back in the vault, surrounded by quiet power, Anna logged the incident. 1 sentence. Correction achieved. She closed the file. A new mission loaded. And somewhere, far beyond the noise of egos and ranks, the real work continued. Because dignity doesn't beg for recognition. It simply endures. And when pushed far enough, it acts. Why didn't she report him immediately, when everyone would have believed her? Anna Sharma asked herself that question as the clinic door closed behind her, sealing in the sterile chill and sealing out the sun, the noise, the witnesses. Her arm throbbed now, no longer abstract, no longer compartmentalized. Pain had patience. It waited until privacy, until safety, until denial had nowhere left to hide. The medic kept glancing at her face as if expecting emotion to finally surface. Anger, fear, tears, something, but Anna gave him none of that. She focused instead on the sound of keys as he typed. The rhythm was uneven, distracted. He was unsettled. "This isn't normal for a demonstration," he said carefully. She nodded once. "Please document exactly what you observe." That was when he really looked at her. Not as a patient, as a soldier. He rotated her elbow gently. She inhaled through clenched teeth but didn't flinch. The pain was sharp, then hollow, like a door slamming shut somewhere deep inside her. She let it happen. She needed to know the extent of the damage, not emotionally, logistically. "Partial ligament tear," he said, "at minimum." She filed it away. Minimum meant time. Time meant leverage. He asked how it happened. She answered with facts only. No adjectives, no tone. He raised his eyebrows at that too. People expected victims to decorate pain with language. Anna refused. Pain didn't need adjectives to be real. When he finished, she read the report line by line before signing, corrected a timestamp, asked him to add a sentence about excessive force. He hesitated, then nodded. That nod mattered. Outside, the base looked the same. Vehicles moved, soldiers joked, orders echoed. But Anna felt displaced from it, like she was observing through glass. She walked not to her quarters but to the vault. Some people healed by resting. She healed by working. The vault welcomed her with its low hum and blue light. Servers didn't care about rank. Data didn't sneer. Patterns didn't underestimate. She sat down, adjusted the sling, and logged in. For a moment, just a moment, she let herself feel something she hadn't at the training field. Anger. Not explosive, not dramatic, controlled, dense. The kind that didn't burn out quickly, the kind that powered engines. She replayed the footage. She saw the way Roland smiled before grabbing her arm, the way his posture shifted, not instructional but predatory. She watched herself remain still, watched the moment his intent crossed a line. She didn't watch it as a victim. She watched it as an analyst. She tagged timestamps, cataloged angles, noted witnesses, cameras, everything that mattered when stories collided. Then she stopped, because action without timing was just noise. She minimized the file and pulled up her real assignment, an adversary air defense network that had been evolving for months. It was unstable, fragmented, dangerous in its unpredictability, exactly the kind of thing that rewarded patience. As she worked, pain flared and receded in waves. She adjusted her breathing, let it exist without owning her. She had learned long ago that pain demanded attention, but not obedience. Her thoughts drifted, uninvited. She remembered another room, another heat, another man who had underestimated her. That one hadn't worn a uniform, he'd worn desperation. She had been younger then, less controlled. She had survived that moment too, but not cleanly. That memory was why she didn't react now. Because reacting gave people like Roland's what they wanted. Control. 3 hours later, she had mapped the network's vulnerability, a frequency-hopping delay, elegant, fragile. She documented it, sent it up channel, and leaned back slightly. Only then did she allow herself to feel tired. The sling itched, her shoulder burned, and beneath it all sat something heavier. Doubt. Not about what had happened, about what would happen next. She knew systems, knew how often truth bent under rank, how often loud men rewrote quiet moments. She had seen careers disappear for less. She had survived by being exceptional and invisible. Reporting him now would mean visibility. And visibility was dangerous. That night she lay on her bunk staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant cadence of boots on pavement. Her arm ached. Sleep hovered just out of reach. What if they closed ranks? What if the footage went missing? What if she became the problem? She exhaled slowly. Fear was data too. It told you where you were vulnerable. The next morning she entered the dining facility earlier than usual. Fewer people, less noise. She sat alone by habit, not avoidance. Solitude was efficient. She had taken 3 bites when the sound changed. Boots confident approaching. She didn't look up. Roland's voice filled the space like it owned it. Still hiding behind paperwork, Chief. She continued chewing. That silence, the refusal to engage, wasn't weakness. It was calibration. She listened to his tone, measured his volume, tracked who was watching. When he mocked her injury, something inside her tightened. Not rage, resolve. This wasn't about pride anymore. It was about pattern. Bullies escalated when ignored, always had, always would. She lifted her eyes then, met his gaze flat, unimpressed. "This conversation is non-productive," she said. That was all. He blocked her path when she stood, threatened her openly, mentioned his report, his influence. She noted the words, the witnesses, the security camera over the serving line. This wasn't harassment anymore. It was retaliation. When she walked away, her pulse was steady, but inside a calculation completed itself. The system had its second input. That evening, as the sky darkened and sodium lights flickered on, Anna chose her usual route deliberately. Predictability could be a trap or bait. Her footsteps echoed softly along the tree-lined path. Her senses widened. She felt the world more than saw it, the shift in air, the subtle sound of movement ahead. 3 silhouettes stepped into her path. She stopped. Fear surfaced then, real, cold, sharp. But fear didn't paralyze her. It clarified her. When Roland spoke, low and smug, she confirmed what she already knew. This wasn't impulse. This was intent. When he grabbed her injured arm, pain detonated behind her eyes. Her breath caught. For a fraction of a second, doubt surged. Can I do this one-handed? Then instinct took over. Not rage, not desperation. Training. Years of it, classified, forgotten by everyone who didn't need to know. She didn't fight them. She let them defeat themselves. 7 seconds later, the night was silent again. She stood there, heart steady, lungs full, and looked up at the camera she had personally approved months earlier. The red light blinked. Good. As she walked away, her legs trembled, not from fear but from release, from the end of restraint. That night's sleep came hard and deep. Because for the first time since the training field, uncertainty was gone. She had done nothing wrong. And she had done exactly enough. Sometimes survival isn't about striking first. It's about waiting until the truth has nowhere left to hide. How did the story change overnight, without her saying a single word? Anna noticed it the next morning before anyone spoke to her. The air felt different, not lighter, sharper, like a surface that had been scrubbed too clean, exposing what lay underneath. She walked across the base with her sling still in place, boots striking pavement in a steady rhythm. Conversations dipped as she passed, not abruptly, just enough to be noticeable. Eyes followed her, not curious now but cautious, measuring. Rumors had shape even when they had no words. She didn't acknowledge any of it. She had learned long ago that attention fed narratives she didn't control. Silence, on the other hand, forced people to fill gaps on their own, and people were far harsher judges than she ever needed to be. Inside the vault, the world returned to order. Screens, data, logic, the hum of servers that didn't care about gossip or rank. She logged in, reviewed overnight traffic, and began working through a new signal anomaly that had surfaced while she slept. Her focus was total, but beneath it a quiet awareness persisted. This wasn't over. At 9:30, her secure line blinked once. Command summons. She closed her work without hesitation, saved her progress, and stood. As she walked, she replayed everything, not emotionally but tactically. What existed on record? What existed only in memory? What could be corroborated? What could not? The colonel's office was quiet in the way power preferred. No clutter, no distractions. Colonel Evans sat behind his desk, hands folded, expression unreadable. A data slate rested in front of him. She stopped 2 paces from the desk, parade rest, calm, controlled. "Chief," he said, "have a seat." She sat. For a long moment he studied her. Not her injury, not her rank, her stillness. "I have 2 reports," he began, "and several unofficial accounts. I want to hear yours." She didn't speak. Instead, she reached into her cargo pocket and placed her own data slate gently on the desk. The sound it made was small, precise. "My statement, medical documentation, and video files are contained here, sir," she said. "They are time-stamped and encrypted." He picked it up slowly, as if weight mattered. "You're aware of the seriousness of these allegations?" "Yes, sir." "And you're comfortable submitting this?" She met his eyes. "I am comfortable with the truth." That was all. He nodded once and dismissed her. Back in the vault, time stretched. Work resumed, signals flowed, threats evolved, and somewhere above her gears turned. Rollins was summoned that afternoon. Anna didn't see him, but she heard about it. Not details, just the tone of the base shifting again, confidence draining, voices lowering. By evening, the whispers had sharpened into something closer to belief. That night she allowed herself a moment she usually denied. She stood alone in the vault, lights dimmed, and pressed her forehead briefly against the cool edge of her desk. The ache in her arm pulsed steadily. Fatigue seeped into places discipline usually guarded. What if this went wrong? Not just for her, but for the work. She had built her career by being reliable, unproblematic, exceptional without demanding recognition. This was disruption, necessary but costly. She straightened. Cost didn't negate necessity. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. In the days leading up to it, Rollins avoided her. His lieutenants did not. Their glares followed her through hallways. Once, Mills muttered something under his breath as she passed. She didn't respond. Fear wanted reaction, so did ego. She gave them neither. At night she replayed the thermal footage, not out of doubt but to refine her memory. Every movement, every second. She needed to be precise, not defensive. Precision was credibility. On the fourth night, Sergeant Major Torres appeared in the vault. He didn't announce himself. He never did. "Chief," he said. She turned, "Sergeant Major." He looked at her sling, then at her face. His eyes were sharp, experienced, unromantic. "I've seen the footage," he said simply. She waited. "You didn't escalate," he continued. "You ended it." A pause. "That matters." Something loosened inside her then. Not relief, validation. "Thank you, Sergeant Major." He nodded. "Be ready, truth has momentum, but it still needs room to move." The hearing room was sterile and unforgiving, wood-paneled, quiet, designed to strip emotion from consequence. Roland stood stiffly when she entered. His face was drawn now, jaw tight. Gone was the swagger, gone was the certainty. Captain Calloway presented first. The training footage played. Anna watched the faces in the room instead of the screen, watched flinches, watched discomfort, watched understanding dawn where denial had lived. Then the thermal footage. No sound, no narration. Just facts. 7 seconds. No excessive force, no retaliation, just control. When it ended, the room felt smaller. Roland spoke after. His voice lacked its old confidence. He blamed stress, misinterpretation, provocation, claimed she had embarrassed him, undermined authority. Anna listened without expression. When asked if she wished to speak, she stood. She didn't argue. She didn't accuse. She answered questions, briefly, precisely, each answer anchored to evidence. When asked why she hadn't reported him immediately, she paused. "Because systems respond best to patterns, sir," she said, "not moments." The room went quiet. Then Sergeant Major Torres spoke. He didn't talk about her demeanor, or her gender, or her restraint. He talked about competence. About a mission years earlier. A battalion saved by intelligence that never made headlines. By someone who worked in silence while others slept. He said her name. And something fundamental shifted. Roland stared at her then, not with hatred, but with something closer to shock. He finally saw her. Not as a challenge. As a truth. The verdict followed swiftly. Reprimands, career-ending ones, loss of command, administrative separation. Rollins didn't look at her as he left. Anna felt no triumph. Only completion. Days later, as she crossed the parade field, a young sergeant spotted her, snapped his squad to attention, ordered a salute. She returned it. Not because she needed it, but because respect, when offered sincerely, deserved acknowledgement. Back in the vault, she logged the outcome. 1 line. Then closed the file. Another signal spike caught her attention. New pattern, new problem. She leaned forward, focus absolute. Because the work never stopped. And neither did the quiet resolve that had carried her through when noise failed. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. Sometimes it simply stands, long enough for the truth to finish speaking. What happens after justice is served, but the weight of it doesn't leave. Anna discovered the answer in the quiet days that followed, when the base returned to its routines and the noise moved on to something else. Justice, it turned out, was not loud. It didn't announce itself with celebration or relief. It settled slowly like dust after a storm, leaving you to breathe through what remained. Her arm healed gradually. The sling came off. The bruising faded from deep purple to a sickly yellow, then disappeared entirely. But some injuries didn't follow medical timelines. People treated her differently now. Not unkindly, not reverently, just carefully. Conversations paused when she entered rooms. Jokes softened. Eyes measured her with a new calculus. She had crossed an invisible line, no longer invisible herself. That visibility unsettled her more than the injury ever had. In the vault, she worked longer hours, not because she was asked to, but because focus still felt safer than reflection. Signals didn't ask how she felt. Patterns didn't care what she'd endured. They only asked to be understood. Still, there were moments, small, unexpected ones, that cracked her composure. A junior analyst hesitating before speaking in meetings, watching her face for approval. A captain asking her opinion, then actually listening. A quiet knock at her door one evening. A young specialist, hands shaking slightly, asking how to document an unsafe training practice without ending his career. She answered him carefully, not as a mentor, as a fellow soldier who understood risk. That night she sat alone in her quarters, staring at the command coin Sergeant Major Torres had given her. Heavy, solid, earned. She turned it over in her palm. She had never chased recognition, had never wanted to be an example. Examples were visible, vulnerable. But now, whether she wanted it or not, people were watching how she carried herself. That responsibility weighed more than the coin. The call came a week later. High priority, secure channel. She recognized the voice immediately. Calm, controlled, familiar in a way that pulled old memories to the surface. Chief Sharma, the voice said, "It's been a while." Her posture straightened automatically. "Yes, sir. We have a developing situation overseas," he continued. "Signals heavy, time sensitive, your name came up." Of course it did. She listened as he outlined the problem. A proxy force, an adaptive network, misinformation layered over encrypted chatter. It was messy, complex, alive. Exactly the kind of work she was good at. "We need someone who can see through noise," he finished. "Someone who doesn't react, who waits." She almost smiled. "I'm available," she said. The deployment orders came quietly. No ceremony, no fanfare. She packed efficiently, left behind what she didn't need, took only what she always did. On her last night at the base, she walked the perimeter alone, the same path where everything had come to a head weeks earlier. The lights hummed softly, trees rustled in the distance. She stopped where it had happened. There was nothing there now, no marks, no memory except the one she carried. She closed her eyes briefly. Not in fear. In acknowledgement. In the weeks that followed, she worked from temporary facilities in places that never appeared on maps, rooms without windows, nights without names. She followed signals across borders, through chaos, into patterns that told stories most people never heard. She slept in short stretches, ate when reminded, let focus replace emotion. But sometimes late when the work slowed, her thoughts drifted. She wondered if Rollins had learned anything. She wondered if the lieutenants would carry their lesson into whatever came next. She wondered if the system would remember why it had corrected itself, or if it would need reminding again. Then the work would surge, and the questions would fade. One night deep into the operation, she caught something. A subtle anomaly, a delay that didn't belong, a repetition where randomness should have lived. Her pulse quickened, not with excitement but recognition. There it was. The same pattern she had seen years ago, the kind that preceded ambush. She leaned closer, fingers moving with precision, tracing the signal back through layers of deception. It led to a cluster of nodes, a command cell, active, coordinated. She didn't raise an alarm immediately. She waited, watched, confirmed it. When she sent the report, it was concise, unemotional, it moved fast. Hours later, the network went dark. Lives were saved, though most of them would never know it. She sat back and exhaled slowly. That was the part she never talked about, the part that didn't make stories, the quiet prevention, the battles that ended before they began. In the days that followed, the operation stabilized. Her role concluded as seamlessly as it had begun. No praise, no headlines. Just a brief message from a secure channel. Good catch. She allowed herself a small, private moment of pride. Not because she had been right, but because she had trusted herself when it mattered. On the flight home, she stared out at clouds she couldn't touch, thought about the base she'd left behind, the people there, the shift she'd triggered without meaning to. She didn't know if it would last. But she knew this. Strength wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was patient. Sometimes it absorbed impact until the moment came to redirect it. Back at the vault, she resumed her place as if she'd never left. The servers hummed. The lights glowed. Data flowed. Colonel Evans stopped by once, didn't stay long. "Command hasn't forgotten," he said. She nodded. After he left, she opened her personal log, scrolled past old entries, stopped at one. Correction achieved. She added another line beneath it. Correction maintained. Then she closed the file. Outside, the base continued its rhythm. Orders, training, voices. Inside the vault, Anna Sharma leaned forward, eyes fixed on the unseen battlefield. Ready. Because resilience wasn't about winning once. It was about holding the line, quietly, long after the noise moved on. When did she realize the cost hadn't been paid yet? It came not with a threat or a confrontation, but in a moment so ordinary it almost slipped past her. Anna was standing in the vault, reviewing a routine signal sweep when she noticed her hands trembling just slightly. Not from fatigue, not from caffeine, from something deeper, something unresolved. She stilled them by resting her palms flat on the desk. The shaking stopped, but the awareness didn't. She had returned from deployment with the operation marked successful and the threat neutralized, yet something inside her remained on alert, as if the fight had ended on paper but not in her body. She had learned long ago that the mind was often the last place wounds appeared. The base had changed, yes, but so had she. People deferred to her now, not overtly, subtly. Meetings paused when she spoke. Decisions leaned in her direction. Even officers with more visible authority listened differently. Respect was a strange thing. It warmed and isolated at the same time. She missed being unseen. One afternoon, while walking between buildings, she heard raised voices near the motor pool. Instinct slowed her steps. She didn't look immediately. She listened. A senior NCO, a young female private. The cadence was familiar, dismissive, pressing, framed as correction, sliding toward humiliation. Anna felt something tighten behind her ribs. She turned. The NCO stiffened when he saw her. His tone shifted instantly, professional now, controlled. He dismissed the private and saluted Anna sharply. "Chief," he said, too quickly. She returned the salute. "Sergeant," she replied. The private hurried away, eyes down, shoulders tense. Anna said nothing else. She didn't need to. But as she walked on, the cost revealed itself. This was what change looked like in real life, not clean resolutions, but constant vigilance. A system corrected once still carried the habits that had broken it. And now, whether she wanted it or not, she was a reference point. That night sleep evaded her. She lay awake listening to the quiet sounds of the barracks, someone coughing, someone laughing softly, life continuing. Her thoughts circled a question she hadn't allowed herself to ask before. How long could she keep holding this line? She had built her identity on endurance, on absorbing pressure without complaint, on believing that if she stayed sharp and professional, the system would eventually do the right thing. But the truth was harsher. Systems didn't change because of ideals. They changed because people refused to bend. The realization didn't make her angry. It made her tired. The next day, Colonel Evans requested her presence, not formally, not urgently, just a quiet invitation. His office looked the same, minimal, controlled. He gestured for her to sit. "I wanted to check in," he said. She waited. "You've had an outsized impact," he continued, "not just operationally, culturally." She met his eyes. "That wasn't my intention, sir." "I know," he said. "That's usually how it happens." He leaned back slightly. "There's talk of moving you into a broader advisory role, training oversight, standards enforcement." There it was. Visibility. Responsibility. Exposure. Anna felt the weight of it immediately. Not fear, hesitation. She had seen what happened to people who became symbols. They stopped being individuals. They became battlegrounds. "With respect, sir," she said carefully, "my effectiveness comes from focus. Diluting that may reduce impact." He nodded. "I expected you to say that." A pause. "We won't force it," he said. "But consider this, sometimes preventing damage upstream saves more than any single mission." She absorbed that. After she left, she walked without destination, letting her thoughts settle. She passed training fields, offices, groups of soldiers laughing, arguing, living. She saw herself reflected in them, not as they saw her now, but as she had been. Younger, determined, quietly afraid of being misjudged. She stopped near the range. Watched recruits struggle through drills. Watched instructors correct them, some with patience, some with ego. Change, she realized, wasn't a single act. It was repetition. That evening, she opened her personal log again, scrolled past entries she rarely revisited. She stopped at one from years earlier, a short note written after a mission that had gone wrong, not tactically but humanly. "I stayed silent, it was easier, someone else paid for it." She closed her eyes. That silence had taught her something she had never forgotten. The next week, she accepted the advisory role on her terms. Limited scope, clear authority, defined boundaries. No speeches. No ceremonies. Just access. Her first review was quiet. She sat in the back of a training observation, watching instructors demonstrate compliance techniques. Her presence alone altered behavior. Movement slowed, pressure moderated, language softened. Afterward, she met privately with the cadre. She didn't accuse. She asked questions. "Why this grip? What's the injury threshold here? What's your fallback if resistance increases?" The questions did more than any reprimand could. Over time, the questions spread. People began asking them of themselves. Not everyone welcomed it. Some resented her, some whispered, some waited for her to fail. She accepted that. Resentment was cheaper than injury. One afternoon, she found a note slipped under her door. No name, just a line written carefully. "Because of you I spoke up, thank you." She read it twice, then folded it and placed it in her pocket. That night she allowed herself something rare. Relief. Not because everything was fixed, but because momentum existed. Weeks turned into months. Her arm healed fully, the memory of pain dulled, the vigilance remained. She never saw Rollins again. Occasionally she heard his name mentioned in passing, never fondly, never with power. He became a cautionary tale. Anna didn't dwell on it. What mattered were the small shifts, the pauses before actions, the awareness that strength without restraint wasn't strength at all. Late one evening, long after most lights had gone dark, she stood alone in the vault. Screens glowed softly. Data streamed. She realized her hands were steady. Not because she was relaxed, but because she had integrated the experience. It no longer sat apart from her. It had become part of how she moved through the world. She opened her log one last time, added a final line beneath the others. Endurance without correction is just survival. Correction turns survival into purpose. She closed the file. Outside, somewhere beyond the concrete walls, soldiers slept more safely than they had before. Not because of her alone, but because she had refused to stay silent when silence was easier. Anna leaned forward, eyes catching a new signal ripple forming on the edge of the screen. Work resumed, and with it, the quiet certainty that, while she could not fix everything, she could hold the line long enough until someone else was ready to take it from there. What does strength look like when the fight is finally over and no one is watching? Anna didn't know the answer right away. She only knew the feeling when it arrived. It came late one night, long after the vault had emptied and the base had settled into that half-sleep where lights glowed but voices faded. The servers hummed in their endless rhythm, indifferent and dependable. She sat alone, shoulders slightly forward, eyes tracking a slow-moving cascade of data that posed no immediate threat. Routine work, the kind that once felt like refuge. Tonight it felt different. Not wrong, just complete. She leaned back and closed her eyes for a moment, not out of fatigue but permission, the kind she rarely gave herself. Her breathing slowed. The tension she'd carried for months, years, really eased its grip, not all at once but enough for her to notice its absence. That was when she understood. The fight hadn't ended with the hearing, or the deployment, or the policy changes quietly taking root across the base. It ended when her body finally stopped bracing for impact. She opened her eyes. The screen reflected back a calm, focused version of herself. Not hardened, not triumphant, just present. Earlier that day, a junior officer had stopped her in the hallway, awkward, nervous. He thanked her not for what she'd done but for how she'd done it, for staying professional when it would have been easier to explode, for choosing documentation over domination, for restraint. She nodded politely and moved on. But the words lingered, because restraint was not weakness. It was discipline refined by pain. In the weeks that followed, the base continued to change in small, almost imperceptible ways. Training protocols were adjusted. Observers rotated through sessions that had once gone unquestioned. Language softened, not because people were afraid, but because awareness had entered the room. Anna watched it happen without claiming ownership. Change that demanded credit rarely lasted. She kept working, kept listening, kept asking the kind of questions that made people pause before acting. One afternoon, she stood at the edge of a training field as a new group of soldiers cycled through close combat drills. The instructor demonstrated slowly, carefully. He emphasized control, exit points, safety. Anna caught his eye briefly. He nodded. No words were exchanged. That was enough. Later, Sergeant Major Torres found her near the vault entrance. Retirement was approaching for him. Everyone knew it. His posture still carried authority, but there was a softness there now, perspective. "You leave things better than you found them," he said. She considered that. "I try not to leave things worse," she replied. He smiled at that, a real one. "That's how it starts." They stood in silence for a moment. Two soldiers from very different paths, bound by a shared understanding. When he walked away, Anna felt a quiet gratitude she didn't often allow herself to name. Time passed. Another deployment request came and went. She declined this one, not because she couldn't go, but because someone else could, someone she'd trained, mentored, trusted. Watching that handoff felt like exhaling after a long hold. The night before that team departed, she stood on the flight line, hands in her pockets, jacket zipped against the cold. The engines roared to life. Faces she recognized looked back at her, some confident, some anxious, all committed. She caught one young woman's eye, a specialist, newer than she'd been back then, still carrying the untested weight of expectation. The specialist hesitated, then approached. "Chief," she said quietly, "any advice?" Anna thought for a moment. "Pay attention," she said, "to everything, especially what feels off." The specialist nodded, absorbing it like doctrine. As the aircraft lifted into the night sky, Anna didn't feel the old pull, the ache to be there. She felt something steadier. Trust. Back in the vault, she resumed her place. The familiar glow, the familiar hum, but something had shifted permanently. She no longer worked to prove herself. She worked because the work mattered. On a quiet evening near the end of the year, Colonel Evans stopped by one last time before transferring to a new command. His hair was grayer now, his tone reflective. "You changed the trajectory of this place," he said, not loudly, but decisively. Anna didn't deflect this time. "I did what was required," she said. He nodded. "That's the rarest kind of leadership." When he left, she didn't return immediately to her console. Instead, she stood there alone, letting the moment settle. She thought back to the training field, the sun, the crowd, the pain, the silence. She thought of the choice she'd made, not to shout, not to strike first, not to disappear. To endure, to document, to wait. That choice had cost her comfort, safety, anonymity. But it had given something back. Alignment. She opened her personal log for the last time, not because she needed to record anything, but because closure deserved acknowledgement. She read the entry slowly, the progression, the evolution. Then she added one final sentence. "Strength is not the absence of fear, nor the presence of force. It is the refusal to abandon oneself." She closed the file and deleted the shortcut from her desktop. Some things didn't need revisiting. The next morning, Anna walked across the base as the sun rose, casting long shadows over concrete and steel. Soldiers passed her, some saluting, some nodding, some simply moving on with their day. She returned each salute, returned each nod. Then she disappeared back into the quiet places where she had always done her best work. The world would never know most of what she prevented, the battles that never happened, the injuries that never occurred, the voices that learned to pause before speaking. And that was fine, because dignity didn't need witnesses. It didn't demand applause. Sometimes dignity endured pain in silence. Sometimes it waited while arrogance exposed itself. Sometimes it chose patience over pride and precision over rage. And when the moment came, when there was no other option left, it acted, not to dominate, not to humiliate, but to correct. And in that correction, something rare took shape. Respect. Quiet, earned, unshakable. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.